Welcome back, everybody, to the second half hour of News Talk. Coming up for you later this half hour, are you confused or scared by all that talk of $17 tolls on Interstate 66? We'll talk with Governor Terry McAuliffe. Right now, though, let's get back to our conversation with attorney A. Scott Bolden. What were your reactions? What was your reaction when you saw the video that was shot in a South Carolina classroom of a school resource officer who is a sheriff's deputy with that rough physical handling of that teenager who may have done something prior to the video rolling that we don't fully appreciate as well? What were your thoughts as you saw that video? And talk about the difference it makes when we have this sort of thing, video that we can all view and judge.
Well, it's used, but I can't imagine. It doesn't really matter to me what that child did before the video started rolling. Unless that child had a gun and was 300 pounds or 200 pounds, it really doesn't matter. That conduct by the officer is unnecessary, inappropriate, and really has no place in that school or any other school. I thought about my granddaughter who's 12 years old, who can be disruptive sometimes, I'm sure. I thought about my 20-year-old twins who, when they were growing up, could be very disruptive. But the police, as well as parents and grown-ups, have to be grown-ups. And so that's one way of dealing with an unruly child, but there's so many other ways of doing that. If you compare that video to the video of the D.C. cop who did the dance-off with the kids who were fighting in Northeast Washington, I got to tell you, one of them did it the exact right way, the other one did it the exact wrong way. And so those were my thoughts, if you will. The other part of the problem is just because he's fired, that police officer is fired, doesn't mean this problem doesn't need to be investigated or further prosecuted, others perhaps prosecuted. If you notice from that video, the kids and the teacher did nothing. Many of them didn't even look up from their computers. They almost ignored it. They didn't run. They didn't run to help. They didn't run away. There were no gasps, at least not from what I could hear. And that's a problem because this is accepted behavior. Where's the line of demarcation between who's running the school as the principal and the teacher and the police who are there who are trained to de-escalate, not escalate? So oftentimes we see the police department's reaction to problem situations or even potential problem situations. They're the driving force. They're escalating it. That's why people are getting killed or people are being abused. James Blake in New York in front of a hotel who's on his cell phone. He's a suspect, rightfully or wrongfully. There's no reason for him to get bum rushed. He gets bum rushed. My goodness, you could walk up to him, show him the ID, put him up against the wall, ask him some questions, and then keep it moving. There's no need for this type of physical engagement or over-engagement, I call it.
Talk about how the technological revolution is clearly having an enormous impact on these situations that have gone back since the beginning of human activity, where someone says, I was treated unfairly, so-and-so did this or that to me that they shouldn't have, and the response from the other side is, I didn't, that's not true, well, that's false.
Well, before iPhones, it was your word against the police officer's word, and the police officer is presumed to be telling the truth and to be making an arrest, and because if you weren't doing anything wrong, why would he make the arrest? Why would he create this word? But the IT age has brought cameras into everyone's hands, and so now you're getting balanced views that, you know, people who trust and protect and serve those police officers, you had white Americans believing that you could trust them, and you had black Americans, African Americans, or people of color saying that you could not. If you take those same polling numbers now, or more recent polls, they're balancing out, because not only are you seeing it on video, right, but we're living it over and over again all across the country. The culture of the police, the culture of this violence or appearance of violence, if you will, being caught on these video cameras is just startling, if you will. And so I think two things. One, I think it's showing us that there are bad actors, not all, every police officer isn't, but there are bad actors. And two, that the culture of the police, the culture of their training, and really who we're hiring needs to be examined. And we need to be on a monthly, annual, quarterly basis redefining how we train and how we continue to train after they're hired, but better yet, how we test and train them to even be on the police force.
A policy dispute has broken out publicly between the head of the FBI on the one hand and the White House and the Justice Department more broadly on the other. And it deals with what some have used in a shorthand fashion what has been referred to as the Ferguson effect. The idea that because no officer, no law enforcement person or security guard or school security person like in this most recent case, no one wants to be the next viral video, the guy who's employed one day, fired the next, et cetera, et cetera. And so what's happening theoretically, and what is apparently the head of the FBI thinks going on, the scrutiny, the concern, the fear on the part of law enforcement, they're scaling back. And there's a link that can be drawn between that and the spike in crime we're seeing in some cities, Washington, D.C. included.
Was the FBI commissioner bragging or complaining about bad conduct by police? If I was a police officer, I was well trained, I'm active in the community, I'm there to protect and serve, just do your job. And I wouldn't care whether you had body camera on me. You can follow me around on my beat for 8 hours a day. You may not agree with every decision I make, but I'm not ashamed or afraid or bothered by cameras watching me or videotaping how I carry myself and conduct myself with this community.
Because I'm a professional.
Because I'm a professional. I de-escalate. I don't escalate. I engage the community. I don't have any negative energy. I'm not overly aggressive. I'm there to protect and serve. I engage. I de-escalate. I arrest. I make discretionary decisions not to arrest. Videotape me wherever you want. Those who would have a problem with it are the problem. That they're problem police officers. They have things to hide. They have things that they're not doing correctly. And if you disagree with that analysis right there, then tell me more. Share more facts with me. But I got to tell you, if you are afraid of doing your job, you shouldn't be. You ought to be doing your job, video or not. Those who are afraid of the cameras are afraid of their own conduct.
I have a feeling the discussion about whether there is a Ferguson effect and how broad and what impact is it having, et cetera, I have a feeling this is going to go on for a while. It is noteworthy, and many eyebrows, I think, were raised when the head of the FBI seemed to make a connection, assert a connection, prompting a relatively vigorous and unusual pushback, I think, from the president himself as well as from
completely irresponsible
at the Justice Department.
Completely irresponsible, whether he feels that way or not. There's no empirical data to support that. He's since backed off those statements and said, well, this is how I feel, and while I don't have any empirical data, I can tell you anecdotally this is what I'm hearing, and so forth and so on. Completely irresponsible for the FBI leader, because he sets the tone for the police departments and police officers, federal and local, around this country. And so the statement never should have been made. I understand what he's saying and what he's feeling, but he has a responsibility as a FBI leader to say it in a different way, or to clear it with the White House, or better yet, if there is this effect, to implement change to it, as opposed to commenting on it.
I want to wrap up by talking with you for a moment about what some refer to, again in a shorthand fashion, as driving while black. The New York Times did an analysis of arrest records from Greensboro, North Carolina. They picked a city, I don't know how they picked it. They said documenting racial profiling in police work is devilishly difficult because of a multitude of factors, including elevated violent crime rates in many black neighborhoods, makes it hard to tease out evidence of bias from other influences. But an analysis by the New York Times of tens of thousands of traffic stops and years of arrest data in this racially mixed city of 280,000, again, Greensboro, North Carolina, uncovered wide racial differences in measure after measure of police conduct. I've spoken with few African-American male professionals who can't relate multiple instances, and it's painful.
Who can or cannot?
Cannot.
Who can?
Who can. Right. Relate instances of driving while black. They were in a neighborhood in a nice car because newsflash, the car was theirs and they were in their neighborhood or they were visiting a friend or whatever. And you can sort of feel pain as people relate these stories. Your thoughts about all this?
Well, I raise my hand. I'm one that's been racially profiled. I'm one that's been stopped 3 or 4 times for driving a nice vehicle. I'm one that's been spread out in front of my own home when the alarm went off and the police come and I answer the door in my pajamas. Yes, that happens.
Spread eagle fashion?
In spread eagle until I could get my ID or let to get my ID or have my wife at the time get my ID. These are real stories, okay? And so the data, the video cameras are all showing America that these are bad situations. situations. Not bad police officers per se. Every police officer, the majority of them are outstanding. I've got great friends, and I've done great work, even as a criminal defense lawyer, with police and with the federal and local police. I have. It's an awesome job, and it's very difficult for them. But those police officers who stop for other reasons, right? It has to be eliminated from our police culture, from the thin blue line. On this side of the thin blue line, we've got to have professionals across the board. Difficult, no different than any other profession, but those statistics tell the right story, tell a real story.
Attorney A. Scott Bolton of Reed Smith, Washington, a legal analyst who's with us often to talk about important issues. Grateful for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Good having you here as always. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll talk with Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe. Keep it here.